and our senior here. You see, the question has been, what really is the opportunity cost for an IMF program at this time? It's instructive to make the point that if we had gone to the IMF a bit earlier, the opportunity cost would have been different. Now, there was an opportunity for this government to have gone to the IMF immediately after the 2020 election. But they failed. In their usual character, their boastful character, arrogant posturing, when the opportunity came for them to join the IMF immediately after the 2020 election, they failed. What they rather told us was that we were a proud people and that we were not going to the IMF. I recall vividly Mr. Akufo-Addo immediately 2019 making the point that Ghana was not going to the IMF again. Having made all this noise, today we have had to go to the IMF in an ambulance. And you know, when you go to your physician in an ambulance, your physician will be forced to impose very harsh conditions on you. And so the situation where we went to the IMF in intensive care units, this is what we are going to get from the IMF. Already the IMF has indicated that as part of the conditions to meet this $3 billion whatever, one of the things that they've given to us is the quarterly tariff adjustment for both electricity and water. So you notice that we had applied to the IMF in July the 1st. By September 2022, as part of the conditions, we had already done 27% increase in water and electricity. By December 2022, we had done 29%. A few days ago, tariff had increased by 18% to take effect from 1st July. So for a businessman who is planning your budgets, you are having to pay cumulatively 75% on your electricity. That is the opportunity cost. So that but for this IMF program, you could possibly be paying less. But today, by reason of the ineptitude of the Bawumia Akufo-Addo administration, you are having to pay 75% on water and electricity. The record is there. In fact, if you note, in 2018, there was the need for government, consistent with the timelines, to have allowed for the adjustment of electricity tariffs. Then Akufo-Addo Bawumia took the decision that ahead of the 2020 election, they were not going to increase. And so there had been significant under-recovery in the energy sector. Because remember that the independent power producers are producing power for you. The tariffs have been put in dollar terms. There had been massive depreciation of your local currency. It comes as overhead. But you see, ECG sells currency to you and I in cedis. So the foreign differential losses, they keep it in their books. There's no money to pay. And this had resulted in massive commitment to the independent power producers. Someone must definitely pay. The IMF is saying that because we want you to get to the point that you can fully recover how much goes into production, all the
is that what
line
we're seeing
losses.
In recent increments?
Absolutely. So cumulatively, from September to now, we have done 75%. And that is not going to stop. Again, the IMF is saying that if government can even employ the current labor force, it should be 0.5%. 0.5%. That's dangerous. Because you see, remember that unemployment is a national security conversation. So where, by reason of your ineptitude, your recklessness, you have put this country in a situation where you have to go to the IMF in an ambulance what is going to happen is that the IMF is saying that you can't employ as you want.
It's also because it's a cost issue. Because when
no, that's where I'm going. So because of the wage bill, the associated increase in the wage bill, the IMF is saying that even if you want to do any kind of employment, it should not be more than 0.5%, even less than 1% of your current labor force. Again, the IMF is saying that, look, you can't even increase the salaries of workers. Now get this. This government has consistently done 4%, 7% increment in worker salary. You know that. Now, when you increase worker salary by 4%, but you are dealing with inflation at 45%, to the point that it even went up to 53%, what it means is that even if you increase the salaries of workers, immediately inflationary pressures will knock it off. The worker becomes worse off. Now, even more important, look at our cocoa farmers. A cocoa farmer during the NDC era could possibly buy maybe 4 bundles of iron sheet for the purpose of roofing. Today, that same amount cannot buy even 1 bundle of iron sheet.
Are we going to be worse off in the coming years?
In fact, there is nothing from the IMF program. Everything shows that cost of living is going to what? Be very terrible. And that is why in all of this conversation, remember that as part of the IMF condition, government is upset. They had to come out with 3 new tax handles to generate about 3 billion Ghana cedis just a few days ago. At the point where GUTA, Association of Ghana Industries, Freight Forwarders, among others, told government of Ghana that these 3 tax handles are going to make things terrible for us. Government refused because of this IMF program. You see, if you recall, H.E. John Dramani Mahama at the Ghana at the Crossroad, program gave an indication that, listen, Akufo-Addo, stop the arrogance posturing. Rapidly go to the IMF then. They had put all their hope on e-levy. And so when e-levy failed them, they had no other option to now go to the IMF cap in hand. And that is what has created a problem for the economy now. Look, and I've always made this point. Roland, do you know that one of the reasons why they are begging the IMF for this amount of money is that they want their books to look good so they can go back to the Eurobond market? Because you see, immediately this government came to power, they came with a borrowing mindset, possibly because the finance minister was going to benefit more directly. But look at what they have been doing consistently. From 2017, they did 2.25 billion Franklin Templeton bond. The next year, they did another 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion. In fact, the only time that they could not borrow was 2022. All because the various credit ratings have downgraded us. So they could not go back. So if you note...
So why? Because the market was close to us? Because
our debt numbers were not looking good. And the investors were getting concerned. And Akufo-Addo will not show any form of, corresponding behavior. Do you know that at the time when the economy was getting to a crash point, that was when Akufo-Addo decided to meet his childhood fantasies of flying luxurious private jets.
Why do you describe it as childhood fantasies?
Yeah, because you see, it doesn't make sense.
You didn't listen to the defense minister when he came before Parliament and said it was because
ignore him. As for him,
of the security
he's the defense minister. Listen, as for that, our defense minister, ignore him. Look, at the time when he was justifying it, the president had used the same presidential jet to fly from Accra to Uganda for the inaugural ceremony of Yoweri Museveni. It cost 6 hours. But the president said he could not do 6 hours to London. But he can do that to Uganda. So ignore him. The same private jet. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Was it not the same man who said the president needed a place where he can bath and refresh in the air? This, and you call this a defense minister. Our people will say, Namaste. Look, there are serious matters that we need to look at. In the sense that For the past 6 years, the Akufo-Addo administration took upon itself a certain borrowing culture because the finance minister's company.
What do you mean by borrowing culture?
A borrowing culture in the sense that consistently in 6 years, they have done $13 billion in bonds. Eurobond alone, $11 billion.
Edudzi, you have 3 minutes, man. Please.
Do you know that in 8 years of Mills Mahama Emisata, the overall bond purchase was just $3.5 billion. In 6 years, Akufo-Addo has done $11 billion in Eurobond plus the 2.25 Franklin Templeton bond, making it $13 billion. Now, you see, the painful aspect is this. If you have borrowed this much and you have corresponding capital expenditure project to correspond with how much you borrowed, Ghanaians soon have a problem. When the Mills Mahama government went for the 3 billion Chinese CDB loan, if you recall, that 3 billion, they used 1 billion to establish the Atuabo gas project. Do you know that by simple reason of the Atuabo gas project, we are doing $350 million savings annually? That's how much we have been using to buy gas, to buy LPG, among other things. That is what you grow an economy with. Look, one of the visionary things John Mahama did was that he brought the 2.5% value-added tax, right, and established what is now known as the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, GIF. The whole idea of the fund is that you can support local, local construction, whether roads, major projects, among other things, so that the fund becomes the owner of those vehicles. So you want to do an interchange. The fund will put the money in there. When you are done, you either toll it so that the money will come. When this government came, in their usual populace, without thinking, short-sightedness, one morning we woke up only for the, the roads minister to say he's stopping the collection of tolls.
But it was because they were waiting, or as a substitute, introducing e-levy, for which we're told that it was frustrated in being implemented.
Roland, at the basic level, we were told, growing up, that never put all your eggs in what? One basket. These people who claim they have the men, decided that even before they will get the benefit of e-levy, they will scrap the tools. After they've gone 360 degrees,
but we're told that the e-levy was
when the Gans say second, when they say second, do you understand? The Gans, when they say second, they went then came back and said, no, we'll reintroduce the tools again. The point I'm making is that we have elected a bunch of inept, corrupt, reckless people to manage the affairs of this country. Our solution really is not an IMF program. Do you know why?
Why?
Because the overall amount from IMF is just 3 billion. So far, we've gotten 600. Do you know that last year, the Bank of Ghana gave this inept administration in excess of $3 billion.
Well, according to the IMF program and document.
Now they are asking for zero financing from the Bank of Ghana. I am hoping that this time round, Governor Addison will have the balls to look Akufo-Addo in the face.
What do you mean he will have the balls?
No, I mean,
you also hold your feet.
So far, Governor Addison has demonstrated that he's just a poodle for Akufo-Addo and Ken Ofori-Atta.
He's a very competent.
Let me tell you something. 30 seconds. No, 30 seconds. Do you know that as we speak, look at the composition of the board of Bank of Ghana. No, look at the composition of the board of Bank of Ghana. And that is where we need to look at. Thank you very much.